Chapter 5. Michael remembered how his father used to laugh when he'd hear one of the sports announcers say something about how heart could only carry an athlete or a team so far. Little do they know, he said, that he'd given two little taps on his chest, the way the big league ball players did sometimes just after they hit a home run. Their grandfather Poppy's father had died young of something to do with his heart, so he had the great grandfather. Poppy had never made a secret of that. And once back in Havana, when Michael was 5 or 6, Poppy had been in the hospital for a few days with what their mother described as a mild attack to the heart. Poppy laughed off that one too. Mild, he said, usually means it attacks somebody else's heart. Then he would tell them not to worry. He would not only die an old man, he would die in America. He turned out to be half right. Some of it Poppy told Mrs. Carr himself when he had made it back to the apartment that day. Some of it Carlos found out later on his own, because he said he had to know. All of it became their secret. Their father had been driving his gypsy cab on Kingsbridge Road in the middle of May, right before Memorial Day weekend. His fare was a woman. Poppy let her off in front of an old apartment building, and she paid him. It was a beautiful day, so he had the windows drawn, and just as he was pulling away, he heard shouting from behind him. A man was waiting for the woman, an ex-boyfriend. Carlos would find out later. Poppy stopped his Crown Vic, the one with 100,000 miles in it, watching the argument now as well as listening to it. He saw the man raise a hand to the woman, knock her to the ground. The rule is that once they are out of the car, they are no longer your responsibility, he said later to Mrs. Corer, but that was not my rule. Poppy got out of the car, yelled at the man to stop. The man turned and yelled at him to mind his own business. The woman on the ground was crying. When Poppy came up on them, the man took one swing before Poppy put him down. A neighbor would tell Carlos this part. The man got up, tried to charge Poppy like a bull, but Poppy put him down again. That's when he felt something grab to his chest. He tells me this as he begins to fade. Mrs. C later told Michael and Carlos like an old photograph. The woman later told Carlos when he went to visit her that she had thought something was wrong with the kind cab driver then, but he had told her he was just too old to be engaging in schoolyard fights. At this point, the woman's ex-boyfriend had had enough and ran off. Poppy told the woman to call the police and got into his car and drove away. Poppy, even in America, had always warned his sons, you never want to spend too much time talking to the police. He managed to drive home, getting back to their building just as Mrs. Cora was coming back from the noon
Probably me.
mass. Poppy told her he felt as if a bomb had gone off inside his chest. She took him inside to her apartment. I am dying, he said. The way he said it, a look he had, told Mrs. C he was telling her the truth. Let me call a doctor, she said. No, he said, a priest, one who will keep my secret. What secret? Mrs. Cora said. The secret, he said, that I am gone. It was already too late for the priest. Papa held on to Mrs. Cora's hand, telling her, keep my boys together, his last words. Then he died. Father Montoya came and gave him his last rites. Mrs. Cora told him that he was to tell no one, not even the church, about Poppy's death. He asked why. She said because those were the father's wishes, that if something he had called the family court found out the boys had no parents and no relatives, they would come for them. Mrs. Cora said to the boys later, the priest asked who would take care of you two. I told him you would take care of yourselves. The super had a cousin who ran a funeral home over near Kennedy Airport in Queens. He handled the details of the burial at a small cemetery near Adequate Racetrack. Father Montoya drove Carlos, Michael, and Mrs. C. The boys used the emergency money they knew their father had kept in a box in a cupboard to buy a cheap casket. They made sure that the man from the funeral home put Poppy's old catcher's mitt inside with him, and the new ball he and Michael had played catch with the day before he died. They came home and Carlos went looking for work. Mrs. Carter said she would adopt them as her foster children if she could, but her late husband had never bothered to get his papers. And besides, she barely had enough money of her own to live on. Poppy had no brothers or sisters. Their mother, the one who had died so young of cancer, Michael could not even remember her, had sisters still living in Cuba, but neither Carlos nor Michael had spoken to them in years, or had any idea how to get in touch with them. From the time their mother had died, it had just been the three of them, father and two sons. The father who had always told them that he was going to die old and die free until his great heart could carry him so far. Maybe some family could adopt the two of us, Michael said one night, when Carlos was at the kitchen table, figuring out again how much money they would need to get by once the last of Poppy's emergency money ran out. One teenage boy and another about to be a teenager, Carlos said. Maybe there is that kind of family on a TV show in the TV world, but not in the real world. He shook his head. No, we just have to find a way to get by until I turn 18. That's not until next spring, Michael said. Little brother, Carlos said, believe me, if I could change my birth certificate, I would. Would they really separate us if they find out? I can only tell you what I read, mostly on the internet, Carlos said. There's something where they say they would try to keep siblings together, but they can't guarantee it. If someone finds out about Poppy, then we go into family court, and after that, little brother, then it's up to them. The official persons. If they can't place us in a foster home, then we could go into a group home, maybe even back to Cuba. I want to stay here, Michael said. This is our home. Carlos got up from the table, came over, hugged him hard. And it's going to stay our home, Miguel. We're going to stay a family, and we're going to live in this apartment until you graduate from high school and the Yankees come and offer you a big bonus contract. And then, what? Then we live happily ever after in America, the way Poppy promised. You think we can keep everybody from finding out? Do we have a choice? Michael said. I'm afraid. It was something he would never admit to Manny or the other Clippers or even to Mrs. C. Let me worry, Carlos said. You just pitch. So they came up with the story anytime anybody would ask that Poppy had gone to visit his brother in Key West, Florida, and that Mrs. C was looking out for them. Whenever somebody new would ask, Carlos would just tell them that Poppy had been gone a couple of days. This had gone on for 3 months. Carlos worked and worried. Michael pitched. The family of three had become, in Michael Arrow's young mind, an army of two.